Welcome everyone, Christ is risen. You're watching David. And today in this video we're going to be responding to some arguments that Roman Catholics make against the doctrine of the divine energies in Orthodox theology. Many of these arguments are generally just bad arguments, boring arguments, which indicate that they've not done any research on the topics that they're talking about. And we're just simply going to respond to them uh, in throughout this video, at times pointing out the sources whenever we can. Objection number one is something akin to: you guys believe that energies are a different substance, right? So it separates God into having multiple essences, and it also rejects divine simplicity. Uh, the first thing we want to say is that distinction does not necessarily, in all cases, indicate a division or a composition or separation. Uh, so just because we say that God has divine energies that are distinct from his essence does not mean that the divine energies are a different substance or there are multiple different substances. We don't claim that, and we don't accept that presupposition. If you want to accept that presupposition, that axiom as a Christian, you really cannot do that unless you want to be a tritheist, because we can distinguish the persons in the Trinity, and we don't consider the distinct persons as the different divine substances now, do we? We don't consider them composed, we don't consider them divided, we don't consider them parts of the Godhead. So this is why I will also say that, first of all, we don't reject divine simplicity. I'm seeing this so many times. So many uninformed, really stupid people assume that we reject divine simplicity. We've never said that. I've never heard any Orthodox Christian say we reject, like actual Orthodox. I'm saying an actual Orthodox Christian, not a Orthodox that has no clue what they're talking about, is a complete noob, right? I'm talking about no actual Orthodox Christians say we deny divine simplicity, or church fathers. God is not made up of parts. That will be heretical. That will be tritheistic at best. But you can still distinguish between things of God and still say he's not made up of parts. And another example I would like to use in regards to how distinction does not entail separation, even if it at times can have composition, is the unity between body and soul and human nature. Right, a human nature is composite, but it's not divided. In fact, its division is, we call its division death, but death is unnatural. So in its natural state, human nature isn't even supposed to be divisible in a way, when you think about it, because death is, again, it's unnatural, and death is when they become divided. So in its natural state, it shouldn't even be having that potential, in a sense, right? So just something to think about in regards to this topic. Objection number two: God only has one energy, not many energies. We've dealt with this in a previous video of mine, a basic introduction on the essence energies distinction. This is a Taylor Marshall argument, which is, again, very, very bad argument. So I see where they come from. They're trying to say, well, there's one essence, and from this one essence, there's one energy. Okay? So you cannot have multiple energies because there will be multiple essences. They're just using the term one and energy only in the singular sense. They don't accept it. They don't understand that words can have multiple different meanings. And God does have one energy, yes, because God only has a divine energy. That's the one energy. So he doesn't have, like, divine energy number one and another divine energy that will indicate a separate substance. I think the best way to explain this, however, actually, before I get into the explanation, so for example, um, I'll just get in with the analogy. Think of the human analogy, like a human being can walk and talk. I can walk and I can talk at the same time. These are all considered under, the category of human energy, you can say, human power or whatnot, human act. Yet, even though I could always walk, I'm not walking right now. I am talking, but I'm not walking. Uh, And these actions are different actions. So these are different human energies that sometimes I do at the same time. Sometimes I only do one of them at a time, and other human activities that I can be doing, such as breathing and so on and so forth. And it's kind of similar in that way. God has distinct energies. His energy of providence and his activity of creating the world are obviously different things. These are different acts, yet they're also one. So just because something can be spoken of in a plural sense doesn't take away its oneness. Again, if you're a Christian, this is a very basic presupposition that you have to accept. We consider Christ as one, yet he has plural natures, right? So there is unity and plurality in Christ in different senses. You can think of it that way again in regards to the divine energies. Now, this is my explanation. If you don't like my explanation, that is completely fine. We have church fathers that make this explanation too. So again, if you're a Christian and if you care what the church says and its church fathers who defend the truth expresses, you don't have to listen to them. So this is here Saint Basil the Great, I assume, against Eunomius, one of the Cappadocians against Eunomius at least. I'm not going to read the entire page. Basically, what he's saying is, if if you understood energy as only one, then wouldn't all of these things like his foreknowledge, his providence, won't they be his divine essence and also mean the same exact thing? But that makes no sense. That's stupid, says I assume Saint Basil against Eunomius. Saint John of Damascus in the exposition of the Orthodox faith says further, the divine effulgence and energy being one and simple and indivisible, assuming many varied forms in its goodness among what is divisible and allotting to each the component parts of its own nature, still remains simple and is multiplied without division among the divided, and gathers and converts the divided into its own simplicity. For all things long after it and have their existence in it, it gives also to all things being according to their several natures, and so on and so forth. So, St. John pretty explicitly says you can speak of the divine energies as one in a singular sense, but also in a plural sense as well. It doesn't take away from its indivisibility or even its simplicity, according to St. John. Objection number 3. Now we're getting into the more kind of refined. I say kind of because it seems refined when it's anything but refined. But I've heard of this argument before, years ago. And you usually hear this from either some really fringe schizophrenic tradcasts, or you hear this from Sedevacantists, which actually I just, they are also schizophrenic tradcasts of a different kind. So I just want to say this argument, if you hear a Roman Catholic make this argument, don't think they're not sophisticated. This is a very, very bad argument. So this argument, they're saying, oh, Saint Gregory of Palamas speaks of higher divinity, higher theotis, and lower theotis, right? That's the Greek term, lower divinity. This language implies polytheism because it's very easy. It seems like they make him sound as if he's speaking of a higher divinity that is called the divine essence and a lower divinity that is called the divine energies, and that you have two gods as a result of that. That's basically what they're trying to get at. The main problem with this explanation is that they're completely clueless about the concept that Saint Gregory of Palamas is referring to. First of all, especially if you're talking about Tradcaster in communion with Pope Francis, first of all, call Gregory Palamas Saint Gregory Palamas next time, because he is a saint in your church. First of all, John Paul II definitely taught of him as a saint, but if you're not going to listen to what he has to say, you are in communion with Uniates that has him in their calendar. The second week of Lent is literally called the Sunday of Saint Gregory Palamas, celebrated in many different Uniate churches, right? More Uniate churches than other churches that try to be Latinized. So practice calling him Sacred Palamas, amongst other Orthodox saints too. But to get back on this topic, first of all, this distinction the Church Fathers make. In fact, this is an argument that happens between Saint Mark of Ephesus and Manuel Kalekas. You can read this in Saint Mark of Ephesus's first antiretic. Now, the bad news is that this text is not available in English, so you have to know Koine Greek to be able to read the text. But there is an English commentary that you can, check out it in the same text. It's 15 pages, 20 pages, but the commentary is likewise, I think, pretty valuable. And this debate happens in St. Mark of Ephesus's first antiretic. Manuel Kalekas, who is an apostate to Roman Catholicism, make this argument. He makes the same exact argument. And St. Mark of Ephesus quotes many different church fathers. One of them is St. Gregory of Nyssa, which we will check out later on, who uses this language to describe the divine angels. But we have to kind of understand what higher theotis and lower theotis signify, or I'm going to refer to it as higher divinity and lower divinity. On the face of it, according to the untrained eye or the untrained brain, higher theotis and lower theotis will be, metaphysical difference. So it will indicate different substances. To the trained eye, what is going on over here is that the term higher and lower refers to the extension, extension of power, the causal extension of a power coming from a source. So it's directional, right? It has nothing to do with superiority or inferiority. It's a directional thing. So the divine energies, for example, in this sense, will be lower divinity because its causal extension comes from the essence. I mean, again, the Sixth Ecumenical Council kind of makes this argument. St. Maximus makes this argument by saying the divine energies presuppose the essence, right? So if you have divine energies or divine will, you have divine essence because that's where they come from. Likewise, same can be applied to human energy, same can be applied to, dog energies, right? Dog activities. To be able to have dog activities, properties, and characteristics, you having them will presuppose you having dog essence. I mean, you won't have characteristics that are proper and peculiar to dogs in a human being. You could bark like a human being. If you're a freak and you want to cosplay as a dog, you can try barking, but you're never going to be able to bark like a dog. Okay? So on and so forth. And a good analogy for this again will be ice. So think of an ice pack, and the cold of that ice, you can refer to it as the higher cold because that is the characteristic of ice. I mean, you're never going to have ice that's going to burn you like lava, right? And then let's say, for example, your leg is injured and I run there like the good Samaritan I am, and I'm like, oh, your leg is hurt. I'm going to treat your leg with some ice packs. And I treat your leg with ice packs. Now, let's observe what's happening here. There is coldness that ice has, the higher form of coldness, but that coldness is in a way transmitted to that leg. Now that leg is experiencing that coldness. But now is your leg experiencing the higher form, the characteristic cold that the ice has? Not really, right? What you're experiencing is the lower cold, which is the extension of its power of the cold, that is from that ice pack. So you're experiencing its coldness. But the cold of that ice and the coldness that is transmitted to your leg from that ice, they're not two separate objects. What will it look like if there were two separate objects? Well, you will have two ice packs then. Two separate ice packs. But there's only one ice pack. So that's the whole Theotis thing. That's all it is about. It's really that simple. So you see this again from the basketball idiot monastery people, which is not even a monastery. They make this argument all the time. People think these people are geniuses. You have to realize, people watching this video, you have to realize that you might want to consider the possibility that people who make YouTube videos and who sound sophisticated and act as if they know a lot, these people might actually be some of the stupidest people you met in your life. Okay? I mean, even I can be one of those people. I'm not against that possibility. But I know a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people that act like they know what they're talking about, that just are some of the stupidest people. And the Demon Brothers. By the way, about the demon, these people are literal false prophets, dude. I mean, why would you even listen to them? They thought JP2 was the final Antichrist, and they were obviously wrong. So these people are false prophets, and they make stupid arguments. They're completely and absolutely out of their depth, and this is a pure example of that. Now let's look at Saint Gregory of Nyssa. I'm only going to read select portions of what he says on not three gods. He says, most men think that the word Godhead is used in a peculiar degree in respect of nature, and just as the heaven, by the way, the term Godhead here is theotis, right, divinity. And just as the heaven or the sun or any other of the constituent parts of the universe are denoted by proper names which are significant of the subjects, so they say that in the case of the supreme and divine nature, the word Godhead is fitly adapted to that which it is represents to us as a kind of special name. We, on the other hand, following the suggestions of Scripture, have learned that the nature is unnameable and unspeakable. So, here's what St. Gregory is saying here. The divine essence does not have a name. No name is proper to it. It's above all names. So it is without name. It's unnameable. But there are certain other things about God that is nameable, right? These names are divine energies, right? And we say that every term either invented by the custom of man or handed down to us by the scriptures is indeed explanatory for conceptions of the divine nature, but does not include the signification of that nature itself. Then further on, he says, we suppose that Godhead or theotis is called from thea or beholding, and that he who is or theotes, or beholder by customary use and by the instruction of the scriptures is called theos or God. Now, if anyone admits that to behold and to discern are the same thing, and that the God who superintends all things both is and is called the superintender of the universe, let him consider this operation. Operation here is energy, right? Let's not forget that. And judge whether it belongs to one of the persons whom we believe in the Holy Trinity, or whether the power extends throughout the three persons. For if our interpretation of the term Godhead or theotis is a true one, and the things which are seen are said to be beheld, or theata, and that which beholds them is called theos or God, no one of the person in the Trinity could reasonably be excluded from such an appellation on the ground of the sense involved in the word, and so on and so forth. So the term Godhead here, or theotis, is an operation, it's an energy. So, but at the same time, God is, in a sense, by, you can space, by nature, is divine, naturally. But this divinity, which is an activity, and the rest of the different divine energies, again, they are from the divine essence, just as the Sixth Ecumenical Council says. So again, what Saint Gregory of Palamas says with lower divinity and higher divinity is really nothing crazy. It's not something insane. It is in the Church Fathers. Objection number 4. How can certain energies have a beginning and end when everything that has a beginning is created? So, this is again another objection towards Saint Gregory of Palamas, where he kind of says certain energies come and go. We kind of have to understand what that means. So, God doesn't have potency. God doesn't learn new things. He doesn't forget things. So his divine powers are all eternal. Yes, indeed. But certain energies, in a way, you can speak of them as being actualized at a certain time frame, like the incarnation. The incarnation, God could always incarnate. God could become incarnate 3,000 years ago, or even before that, 4,000 years ago, right? 5,000 years ago, 10,000. I'm just kidding. There's no 10,000 years ago. No, but jokes aside, he could be incarnate 3,000 years ago. Again, he has that power, but that power became actual 2,000 years ago. Uh, Again, God's providence is another example. God always has the power to be provident, but to be provident, you have to have creation to be provident over, right? Uh, so I think this objection stems from misunderstanding that God has powers, and some of these powers are actualized, whereas some of the other powers and a lot of these powers and names we don't even know, right? God has infinite energies, and many of these energies we don't even know about because they have not been revealed to us. Because sometimes some of them haven't even been actualized. So you might say here that, oh, you're saying here God has potency. Well, no, not really. But if you're going to take this kind of Aristotelian sense of act potency kind of stuff, of God as pure act, then again, a problem that we have to face if you're going to take that approach, and you heard this numerous times, this is referred to as the Origenist problem, is that the names of God, several names of God, will be equivalent to the divine essence, which then mean that these different names are not actually different at all, and some of these names will indicate creator, right? Being creator. But if it's an essential thing, then God has to be creator. And so the God does not freely create. We, on the other hand, say that God has eternal powers, but he wills certain things to be the case. So he willed to become incarnate 2,000 years ago. He willed to turn water into wine at the wedding at Cana. So God always has the power to be provident. Therefore, he eternally has the power of being provident. However, he's only actually provident when there's creation to be provident over. This doesn't mean God's energies disappear over time or have a beginning. It simply means that at times the act has a beginning and an end. Right? The incarnation. The incarnation isn't. It's not something that goes on today. It happened and it ended. Right? Uh, it's as simple as that. So what Saint Gregory Palamas is saying there in that sense is nothing really that crazy. It will definitely be heretical to say that God's for example God does X act and now he loses that power to do X act. We absolutely do not believe in that. That's obviously not true. Again, if you want to learn, if you want to know more about this, I think Saint Maximus talks about this in the 100 chapters. Saint Maximus talks about this in the 100 chapters of theology. And by 100 chapters, I meant 200 chapters on theology. Saint Maximus talks about this issue in 1.48. And he kind of basically says that temporal acts of God or temporal energies of God have a beginning. This is a bit speculatory. You can see it from his tone as well. He basically speculates that I suppose these are just participating beings like us, human beings, right? And the things relating to them, like again, the example of providence could also be in a way connected to them. And I suppose, he later on says, the works of God not beginning their existence temporally are perhaps participated realities of which participating beings participate by grace, right? Such as goodness, and anything particular is encompassed by the principle of goodness. Put simply, all life, immortality, simplicity. Notice how he says that simplicity is an energy of God. immutability, infinity, and as many things as substantively are contemplated with reference to him, which very things are also works of God, right? Yet not beginning temporally. So, this is kind of how he explains on 200 chapters on theology. If what I said doesn't convince you, then I hope St. Maximus convinces you. But this is the approach that St. Gregory Palamas takes, and this is the approach that we take as Orthodox. And I want to kind of deal a bonus objection. This is a very, very rare argument you don't usually hear at all. And that is the divine energies are not distinct from the essence. They're only epistemically distinct. The bonus objection deserves a bonus response. And that bonus response is that you are an idiot. Ha ha ha. I can't even joke laugh because I'm just very tired. I'm a very busy man. So I don't have that energy to do that, but pretend I'm jovial for the day. But let me explain why this argument is idiotic, because really it cannot be the case. I mean, if it's epistemically distinct, then the divine essence epistemically reveals itself. But that's the eunomian position. And in fact, we see from the church fathers that they are more than epistemically distinct. St. Cyril of Alexandria, and we can find this in Petrologia Graeca 75, 312. The work of energy of God is to create, while that of nature is to give birth. Therefore, nature and energy in God are not identical. St. Mark of Ephesus quotes this against Manuel Kalekas in order to prove that there's a distinction between God's divine energies and essence. There's a Flora Legend by Ubi Petrus for more quotes like this that you can check out. And you can see St. Basil the Great's letter 234, where he deals with, so a lot of people, I see a lot of Roman Catholics and even Monophysites, actually, surprisingly, when they try to deal with this quote, they try to give context in their own way. But it's an absolute failure because they don't really grasp the debate between Eunomius. So Eunomius is a radical Arian. He's a heterousian guy, so he basically says that the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, they're all unlike in essence. So they're not even in like essence, which is what homoians, I think, that's what they will. I think that's the Greek term. They will say the Son, the Father are of like essence, whereas Eunomians will say no, they're not they're unlike at all, because the essence of the Father is unbegottenness. And for Eunomius, and I will talk about this much more in detail in future, but in a basic sense, for Eunomius, the epistemic problem is, how can we know about God? How do we even know God? Well, we can't really know God by epinoia, by these concepts, because these concepts will indicate many different names about God, and these names will be metaphysically real. They will really describe God, but that will indicate distinctions in God, different things in God, and that will be against his simplicity, because we need to remember, Eunomius and Arius, these people in their roots, they are Neoplatonists, and they believe in Neoplatonic presuppositions. One of them in the Aeneads of I believe it's Plotinus that wrote the Aeneads. I'm not a philosophy pro. I'm going off the top of my head. You're a dummy, you don't even know who wrote the Aeneads. Well, at least I don't think the Aeneads is a philosopher like some people think. But he straight up says distinction is division, right? So you have to understand a lot of these people have that presupposition. And so for Eunomius, that's unacceptable. So how can we know God if we can't even have concepts or thoughts that can actually metaphysically really describe God, that allows us to know him? Well, there's only one other route. We know God because we know God's essence. And that's what Eunomius says. We know God because we know God's essence. So this argument, which again is very rare, but I have heard of this argument many times before, both from Roman Catholics and from Monophysites. This argument is very stupid when they try to like review letter 234 St. Basil in this manner, because it will just make eunomius correct. And I heard some people try to say, well, St. Basil, what St. Basil is saying, we can't comprehend the essence, or like we can't know it in its fullness, but we can know a little bit about it. Well, it doesn't work like that. That actually does imply like distinctions in the divine essence. That's not how it works. Okay. But what Saint Basil says here is that we know energies of God. We know the energies of God, His providence, His justness, uh, His power, His wisdom, His greatness, but we don't know His very essence, right? So Saint Basil is essentially saying what we are saying for such a long time, what I am trying to defend here right now. And this section of the book is from uh, Hildebrandt's book on Saint Basil the Great, uh, which is talking about things that I just talked about a couple of minutes ago. The response to eunomius is simple. We know God by His energies, but how do we, in what manner do we know about these energies? Kat epinoia, right? By contemplation, conceptualization. So we know God from contemplation, epinoia, ideas. So our mind has a nous. You can consider this as an eye. This nous has the power of seeing the essences of objects. These can be immaterial objects. These can be material objects. We can literally see these objects. No, this is not a third eye that's like has the power of seeing, like, or like two eyes have, or anything like esoteric like that. What I'm saying is that it can perceive material and immaterial objects through the power of thinking, right? Because we are rational creatures made in the image of God. So that we can perceive God's divine energies, we can perceive things of God, names of God that has metaphysically real existence. And that's how we come to know God. That's how we know God. That's how we approach God. This is exactly what St. Basil says in letter 234. This is what he's saying. Hildebrand dives very deep into this concept in his book, which is very important. So the manifold names, they don't all mean the same thing. They all mean different things, but what they refer to is the same thing, and that's God. And at times, these manifold names, sometimes it's a specific person that adopts this manifold name, even no, not manifold name, but a specific name that could, because the Father has wisdom, right? The Father is wise, but wisdom is what we call the Son, right? He is the personification of wisdom, of God's wisdom in a sense. That doesn't mean that the Father lacks wisdom or has less wisdom than the Son. It's just that the Son manifests that energy of wisdom. Like the Holy Spirit manifests the energy of love between the Father and the Son. So, but I could go more into detail of this, but I think at that point that will be more advanced. Those are issues that were dealt with in the Hesychast synods, specifically Blackernay. If you're interested in that topic, you can go read those books, right? If you don't want to learn about it, but you want to act like you want to learn about it, then all I can say is don't do that. If you do that, you're an idiot, and I want nothing to do with you. And that's all I have for this video. I hope you learned something. I hope at least this is going to make you actually read patristics and proper fathers, not idiots like Bulgakov, or I don't know why people like I've seen so many Roman Catholics. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm reading about Orthodox theologians. You're like, oh, who? It's like, oh, Bulgakov. Bulgakov, huh? Like Bulgakov is a retard, dude. He's not a representative of Orthodoxy. He's a heretic. I mean, I think he's a heretic. And we have synods that call him a heretic, and we have saints that call him an incompetent idiot. So we don't accept what he says. He's not a representative of the Orthodox faith. Who are the representatives of the Orthodox faith? St. Gregory of Palamas, St. John Damascus, St. Maximus the Confessor. These are the people. The Cappadocian Fathers, St. Gregory the Theologian, St. Basil the Great, St. Gregory of Nyssa. These are the people that we look after, not these idiot losers. Go read actual fathers. That's all I'm going to be saying for this video. Thank you for watching this. If you like this, subscribe, share to let everyone know about how great this video is. Like so that YouTube algorithm doesn't hate me and spreads more of my videos to everyone. That would be cool. And yeah, and if you, I don't know, I forgot what I was gonna say. Anyways, thank you for watching this. I am a bit tired, but I'll still on the grind. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. God be with you all.